The Crystal Ballroom at the Fairmont Hotel had been transformed into an elegant celebration space for my parents' 28th wedding anniversary, with white orchids, golden linens and crystal chandeliers creating the perfect backdrop for what Mom called the social event of the season. 150 of the city's most prominent families had gathered to honor Charles and Victoria Sterling's successful marriage and business partnership. "We have no poor daughter." Mom's voice rang out across our family's reserved table near the main stage, where she sat resplendent in her custom Vera Wang gown, every diamond on her tennis bracelet catching the light as she gestured dismissively in my direction. "The Sterling family has built a legacy of success over 3 generations," she continued, addressing the distinguished guests at our table, city council members, bank presidents and real estate moguls who represented the cream of our city's business community. "My husband Charles founded Sterling and Associates Investment Banking 30 years ago. Our son Christopher runs the West Coast division. We simply don't acknowledge failure in this family." I sat quietly at the far end of our table, wearing the same simple black cocktail dress I'd owned for 3 years. Not because I couldn't afford better, but because I'd learned that expensive fashion drew the wrong kind of attention from people who made assumptions about wealth based on appearances. "Victoria's absolutely right," Dad added, adjusting his platinum cufflinks as he surveyed the elegant crowd. "The Sterling name represents excellence, achievement and financial success. We've worked too hard building our reputation to let anyone tarnish it with questionable lifestyle choices." My younger brother Christopher nodded in agreement from his position beside Dad, perfectly groomed in his $3,000 Italian suit. At 26 he was already making partner at Dad's investment firm, following the approved family path toward respectability and social recognition. "Exactly," Christopher said, raising his champagne flute. "We're celebrating success tonight. Real success. The kind that comes from building something meaningful in the financial world." The guests at our table, including Senator Williams and his wife, the mayor and several Fortune 500 CEOs, murmured their agreement. They'd all heard the story of the Sterling family's disappointment. The daughter who'd walked away from a promising career in investment banking to pursue some mysterious, alternative lifestyle that nobody quite understood. I pulled out my phone discreetly, checking the time. It was 8:47 p.m. on a Saturday evening, which meant the Asian markets were opening and my portfolio managers in Hong Kong and Singapore would be executing the overnight trades I'd authorized earlier. "Look at that," Mom said with theatrical exasperation. "She can't even put her phone away during our anniversary dinner. This is exactly what I mean about respect and priorities." The anniversary cake, a 5-tier masterpiece from the city's most exclusive bakery, sat untouched on its crystal pedestal, waiting for the traditional cutting ceremony that would cap off the evening's celebrations. I could have stayed quiet. Should have stayed quiet probably. But something about Mom's public declaration that they had no poor daughter made me finally reach my limit with their assumptions. "Actually, Mom," I said calmly, setting my phone on the white linen tablecloth, "I think you might want to reconsider that statement." The conversations at nearby tables were beginning to die down as people noticed the tension developing at the Sterling family table. "Reconsider what?" Dad asked, his investment banker instincts picking up on something in my tone. "Your assumption about my financial status," I replied, opening my investment portfolio app. The same app one checked every morning to review overnight performance reports from my global holdings. I turned the screen toward them, displaying the summary page that showed my current net worth in large, unmistakable numbers. $3,147,293,856.72. Mom's hands went slack with shock. The anniversary cake she'd been preparing to cut slipped from her grasp, falling to the marble floor in an explosion of white fondant, crystal decorations, and 5 tiers of culinary artistry. The crash echoed through the ballroom like a gunshot, causing every head to turn toward our table. $3 billion? Dad whispered, his voice barely audible above the murmur of concerned guests wondering about the cake disaster. 3.1 billion, I corrected gently, though it fluctuates with market conditions. Yesterday it was 3.08, but the Tokyo closing pushed the tech sector higher than expected. Christopher was staring at my phone screen like it might explode. That's not possible. You work at some little non-profit organization. You drive a Honda Civic. I founded the Meridian Foundation, I explained patiently. It's not little and it's not exactly non-profit. We're a social impact investment fund that generates market rate returns while solving global problems. We manage about $12 billion in assets under management. The silence at our table was so complete I could hear the ice melting in people's drinks. Senator Williams leaned forward in his chair, his political instincts clearly intrigued by this unexpected development. Miss Sterling, did you say $12 billion in assets under management? That's the fund's total portfolio, I explained. My personal holdings represent about 26% of that, plus my stakes in the portfolio companies we've incubated and spun off. The mayor's wife pulled out her phone, probably Googling the Meridian Foundation for the first time. I'm seeing articles about you in Forbes, Fortune, Bloomberg. How did we not know about this? Mom was still staring at the ruins of her anniversary cake, scattered across the ballroom floor like the remains of her carefully constructed family narrative. Because none of you ever asked what I actually do for work, I replied simply. You saw someone who dressed modestly, lived simply, and didn't talk about money, and you assumed that meant I didn't have any. The ballroom staff was efficiently cleaning up the cake debris, but the damage to the evening's carefully orchestrated celebration was complete. Every guest in the room was now focused on our table instead of the anniversary festivities. My phone rang with the distinctive classical melody I'd assigned to my chief investment officer. I glanced at the screen. Dr. Sarah Chin, CEO Meridian Foundation. I should take this, I said to the stunned faces around our table. It's about our overnight trading in Asia. Before anyone could object, I answered the call and put it on speaker. Hello, Sarah. Jessica. Great news from the Hong Kong desk. The renewable energy portfolio outperformed projections by 18%. The solar technology stocks we bought last month are up 43% after that breakthrough announcement from the German research team. Every person at our table was now listening with rapt attention to my phone conversation. Excellent, I replied as casually as if Sarah had told me she'd picked up my dry cleaning. What about the African infrastructure investments? Even better news there. The water purification systems we funded in Kenya are ahead of schedule and under budget. The World Bank wants to use our model for their next round of development funding. We're looking at a 340% return on investment over 3 years, plus we've provided clean water access to 200,000 people. Senator Williams nearly choked on his champagne. Did she say 340% returns while providing clean water? That's our model, I explained to him while Sarah continued her report. We invest in companies that solve meaningful problems. Turns out that profitable businesses and positive social impact aren't mutually exclusive. The education technology investments are performing beautifully too, Sarah continued. Our AI tutoring platform is now used in 12 countries. We're generating 67% returns while providing personalized education to 3 million students who otherwise wouldn't have access. Dad was staring at me like I was speaking in a foreign language. Jessica, how long have you been doing this? 9 years, I replied. I started the Meridian Foundation with $50,000 from my savings account when I was 22. Reinvested every profit, attracted institutional investors who wanted market returns with social impact, and scaled the operation globally. Sarah, I said back into the phone, could we schedule a comprehensive briefing for Monday morning? I'm at a family event right now. Of course. Oh, and Jessica? The United Nations called about that keynote speech they want you to give at the Global Investment Summit. They're very excited to have you address the integration of profit and purpose in modern investing. I glanced around at 8 faces staring at me in complete bewilderment. Have my assistant coordinate with them. I'll review the speech outline next week. Perfect. One more thing. That documentary crew from BBC wants to interview you about revolutionizing impact investing. Should I schedule them? Let's discuss that Monday as well. Thank you for the excellent work, Sarah. I ended the call and slipped my phone back into my purse. The ballroom remained absolutely silent except for the soft classical music and the gentle murmur of staff preparing for the evening's final presentations. The United Nations? Mom asked weakly. They're interested in how large-scale capital can address global challenges while generating competitive returns, I explained. Last year we funded clean energy projects in 15 countries. microfinance programs in Africa, and education technology that's being used by millions of students worldwide. Christopher was scrolling frantically through his phone. Jessica, there are articles about you everywhere. Forbes calls you the billionaire who's changing the world. Businessweek says you're redefining success in the investment world. How did we miss all this? Because you were looking for success that matched your definition rather than success that matched my values, I replied gently. The distinguished guests at our table were completely captivated now. This was more interesting than any business conference they'd attended. For 9 years, you've all assumed I was some kind of idealistic do-gooder who didn't understand real business. You've been embarrassed by my simple lifestyle, my modest apartment, my preference for meaningful work over impressive titles. I looked around at the faces of the city's most prominent business leaders, all hanging on every word. But I wasn't rejecting success, I was redefining it. While you've all been focused on accumulating wealth for its own sake, I've been building wealth that solves problems. Mayor Davidson leaned across the table. Jessica, I had no idea we had someone of your caliber in our community. Have you considered any public-private partnerships with the city? We have infrastructure challenges that could benefit from your investment model. Actually, I said, scrolling through my portfolio app, the Meridian Foundation already has $47 million invested in municipal bonds and infrastructure projects in this city. We helped fund the new water treatment facility, the affordable housing development downtown, and the renewable energy grid upgrades. Dad's face went pale. You've been investing in our city infrastructure? Someone had to, I replied. Traditional investors wanted 15% returns on projects that serve the public good. We provided the capital at market rates because we believe successful communities create better investment environments. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled. What now? Christopher asked, his voice barely audible. The governor's office just confirmed my appointment to the State Investment Advisory Council. They want expertise on how pension funds can generate returns while supporting sustainable development. The murmur that ran through our table spread to nearby tables as word of this conversation traveled through the ballroom. People were pulling out their phones, probably Googling my name for the first time. Mom finally found her voice, though it sounded nothing like her earlier confident tone. Jessica, I don't understand. If you have billions of dollars, why do you live in that small apartment? Why do you drive that old car? Why don't you? Why don't I buy expensive things to impress people? I finished for her. Because I learned early that the most meaningful success happens quietly, focused on impact rather than image. I stood up slowly, straightening my simple black dress, the same modest outfit that had embarrassed them for years. For 9 years I've been building something revolutionary while you've been apologizing for my lifestyle choices. You've introduced me to people as the daughter who doesn't understand business while I've been creating new models for how business can serve society. The anniversary celebration had completely transformed. Instead of a traditional family party, it had become an impromptu business conference with 150 prominent citizens learning about impact investing from someone they'd completely underestimated. Dad stood up too, walking around the destroyed anniversary cake toward where I stood. Jessica, he said quietly, and for the first time in my adult life, my father's voice carried no judgment, no disappointment, just amazement. What you've built, it's incredible. I'm so sorry we never understood. You weren't supposed to understand it immediately, Dad. It took me 9 years to build, and it's different from anything your generation of investors has seen before. Mom was crying now, her carefully applied makeup running down her cheeks as she realized the magnitude of what she'd been dismissing. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. I'm so incredibly proud of what you've accomplished. And I'm so sorry we made you feel like you had to hide it from us. I wasn't hiding it, I said gently. I was waiting for you to ask the right questions. Instead of, when are you going to get serious about money? I was hoping someone would ask, how can money be used to solve serious problems? The evening's program had been completely forgotten. The master of ceremonies gave up trying to restore order as the entire ballroom became focused on conversations about sustainable investing, social impact, and the intersection of profit and purpose. But the most important conversation was happening right here at our family table, where my parents were finally learning to see success through my eyes instead of their own. Jessica, Dad said softly, would you teach us about what you've built? I'd like to understand how you're changing the world. I looked around at the faces of family and friends who were finally ready to learn rather than judge. I'd like that, Dad. But maybe we could start with a question. What problems do you think are worth solving regardless of the profit potential? As the evening continued with discussions about impact investing, sustainable development, and using wealth as a tool for positive change, I realized something important had shifted. For the first time in 9 years, my family was seeing me as successful rather than successful despite my choices. The anniversary cake lay in ruins on the ballroom floor, but something much more valuable had been built in its place. A family that finally understood each other. And that was worth more than any investment return.